Shalom. Today we're going to speak about the Erev Rav, that vast crowd of people that came out from Egypt along with the sons of Israel. Now there are all kinds of theories about these people, how bad they were, for they pushed us to make the golden calf. So let's take a better look at who were these people, how good or how bad they were, because one thing is certain, they are very, very important for the people of Israel. In order to better understand who these people were, the first thing to do is to take a good look at the words that define them in the Torah. Erev Rav. Because when you take a good look at these two words, it becomes quickly obvious that they are the contraction of Aravim, Rabim, countless Arabs. Now for most people, maybe the Arabs were not present in Egypt, maybe they are not linked to Egypt, but at the contrary, there are many, many things that explain how Ishmael and Midian and Medan, who composed the Arab people, were in fact very, very linked to Egypt and were in Egypt with the sons of Israel. First of all, we know that Ishmael is the son of Hagar, who was herself the daughter of Pharaoh. We also know that when Abraham divorced her, she took for Ishmael, her son, a wife from the land of Egypt. So here again, there are links between Ishmael and Egypt. Also subtleties. When Joseph is about to reveal himself to his brothers and orders for everybody to leave him, to get out of there. And he says, Otziu kol ish me'alai, just take away every man from me, from above me. And the very anagram of kol ish me'alai is kol Ishmaeli, which is all the Ishmaelim. Take all the Ishmaelites off me, so he can be alone to reveal himself to his brothers. Now it is well known that the Erev Rav are the ones that gathered around Aaron and pushed him to make the golden calf. Now Aaron asked them to take off the golden rings in order to make that calf. Now, at the time of Gitan, many, many years later, when Gitan fought Midian, he took out of the prisoners or dead people those golden rings they had on them. And it is written very specifically, because they had golden rings because they were Ishmaelites. So to have a golden ring in the Torah is proper to the Ishmaelites. So this is a strong evidence who confirm that those people, that Erev Rav, was in fact composed out of Ishmaelites and Midianites, was composed of Arabs. Now, in our previous video, in the first video, we show that even this crowd of people, these Arabs, were themselves manipulated by another guy above them, who's called AMALEK. So AMALEK always manipulates the Arabs against Israel until today. So we'll see that later on. So that's the first point to show you that these people that come out from Egypt with the people of Israel were nothing but Arabs that were along with Israel in Egypt and in the desert. Now, if the Torah shows us, even with a few words, how all these countless Arabs, all this Erev Rav, came out from Egypt along with the people of Israel, it should also show us, in the same amount of words, when they came in. And besides the fact that Ishmaelites and Midianites and Medonites were involved into bringing Joseph into Egypt, the only people on record in the Torah who ever entered Egypt, besides the people of Israel, is the people who enters Egypt along with Abraham 430 years before that. Now we are taught in Judaism that at that time, Abraham and Sarah, who did not have any sons yet, were converting Gentiles to the ways of the Torah. Sarah was converting the women and Abraham was converting the men. Now, in the days of the famine, when they had to come down to Egypt, they took this crowd of people, they took that soul of people, and indeed they are called soul because they don't come out of their body, they come out of their spirit. So those are spiritual sons and daughters. So they took these people, these converted people, along with them into Egypt. And after that, apparently, these people disappeared. We don't know what happened to them in Egypt. They probably stayed there, we don't know. So again, the only people that comes into Egypt some 430 years before the sons of Israel come out of Egypt, along with all these Arabs, is that people of converted Gentiles from Haran. Now, one thing that links Ishmaelites and Arabs to these people is the fact that when Joseph is being sold by his brothers to the Ishmaelites, it is said that that caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilad, which is exactly at the border of Haran, where at that time Yaakov and Lavan did separate. So you see, there is very subtle indications that confirm all this. Now, the only big dark spots around all this is that at the time of Abraham, when these people came along with him into Egypt, Ishmael wasn't born yet. Midian wasn't born yet. So they cannot be Ishmaelites or Midianites, but other people. Now, the word Erev in Hebrew also recalls the word le'arvev, which is mixing up. Now, Arabs are indeed composed of mixed up families, mixed up tribes and origins. So this points out to the fact that it is possible that Erev Rav also did mix up with that first people that entered Egypt 430 years before that. Now that will explain the fact that later on in the Torah, we see how the Arabs are being manipulated by a group of people that do not belong to them, but that live among them and within them, which we identify as AMALEK. Now, it is important to understand that everything that happens to Abraham in those days will be repeated and amplified with Yaakov later on. Now check it out. Abraham runs away or gets away from Nimrod and comes to Haran, and Yaakov gets away from Esav and also comes to Haran. Abraham makes a family of people in Haran, so does Yaakov makes his own family in Haran. Then there is a famine in the time of Abraham, and there is a famine in the time of Yaakov. Then Abraham takes his family and everything he's got into Egypt, and so does Yaakov, takes everything he has and his whole family and goes down to Egypt. Now Abraham gets rich right away in Egypt, so does Israel. get rich right away in Egypt. Then at the time of Abraham, Pharaoh retains Sarah. And at the time of Yaakov, Pharaoh retains Israel. Then we see that at the time of Abraham, Pharaoh is being hit by plagues. And in the time of Yaakov, we see that also Pharaoh is being hit by plagues. Now at the time of Abraham, Pharaoh releases Abraham and everything is got. So at the time of Yaakov, also Pharaoh releases Yaakov and everything is got. Now when Abraham comes out of Egypt, it is said that he's being very heavy with gold and possessions and silver. So it's the same thing for Yaakov. At the time of Israel, when Israel comes out of Egypt, they came with great riches. Now we see that the people of Pharaoh accompanies Abraham, and we see on the other side that at the time of Israel coming out of Egypt, Pharaoh pursues the Hebrews. Now, after that, right after that, it is said that there was a war of kings at the time of Abraham. Then, when the people of Israel leaves Egypt, it is also told about a war, that Elohim did not want the people to see the war and it took them another way. So you see, there are parallels. And if we push it, we can see that after that, and when Abraham was the age of 70, which is confirmed by our rabbis, that after that Abraham makes an alliance with God, which is called the Brit HaBetarim, where he cuts there the animals, in fragments. And in this particular alliance, the words smoke, ashan in Hebrew, and lightnings, lapid, are being used and only being repeated at the time of the Sinai, which was all in smoke and with lightnings all over the place. So we see all these parallels between what happened to Abraham and what will happen to Yaakov. Because in fact, what happens to Yaakov is but the extension of what happened to Abraham. And this is why, at one point, when Yaakov is about to leave to go to Haran, and that he has his dream on the way of that ladder, God reveals himself by saying to him that he is God, the Lord of Abraham, his father, and the Lord of Yitzhak, which is funny because Yitzhak is his father, Abraham is his grandfather. So here it is specifically indicated that in fact is more the son of Abraham at that point than that of Yitzhak, because he's going to follow the path of Abraham in every point, and he's going to complete what Abraham started to do. So this is a very important thing to understand. Now it is very important that you understand the fact that when Abraham enters Egypt with that crowd of people, of converted Gentiles, he was 70 years old and not 75 years old. The text specifies that when Abraham comes out from Haran, he was 75 years old. But the way it is written is a little subtle, because it is written that he was 5 years and 70 years old. So here there is a little subtleties to tell us that it was not that simple. He was not 75 years old, like it should be written. So our wise scholars confirm it, that he came out at the age of 70 from Haran, then came back, stayed another 5 years, and at the age of 75 years old, came out again from Haran and went to Canaan. Now, the fact that it is written that Sarah gave Hagar the Egyptian to Abraham as a wife, after 10 years they stayed in Canaan, confirmed that fact. Because at that time Abraham was 85. So he stayed there 10 straight years. So he didn't come into Egypt. So he came to Egypt before that. Now it is very important for you to understand that Abraham was indeed 70 years old when he entered Egypt, along with this crowd of converted people. Because then and only then can you understand the very few important things about the Erev Rav and about AMALEK among them and about the people of Israel. Because when the people of Israel exit Egypt, it is written that the stay of the sons of Israel that were in Egypt was of 430 years. Then the Torah, at that point, considers the people that came into Egypt 430 years before that as the sons of Israel. This is one. Two, it is written right after that it is at the end of 430 years that all the armies of God came out of Egypt. Now, if you realize that the armies of God in Hebrew, Tzivot Hashem, has the exact same numerical value as Zera Abraham, which is the offspring of Abraham or the seed of Abraham, 525. You understand that the armies of God are in fact composed not only of Israel, but also of Ishmael. Now, the third and most important thing to understand is that even though these first people are considered as being sons of Israel, as considered also as Israel, these first people that came in with Abraham did fail. They did not succeed in completing their mission because they did not come out, and Yaakov had to come up, make a people, and then do whatever it had to do in order to break Egypt. And only through the sons of Yaakov could these people come out within the sons of Ishmael. So we have here an obscure entity, an obscure group of people that is linked to the Arabs, that was part of Israel, but that fell, that did not succeed. Like a big brother that did not accomplish his mission. Then you had the small brother, the second son, that comes and does finish the mission. And you're going to see that in the Torah, it repeats itself all the time. It's never the firstborn that succeeds, it's always the last one.